Okay, so if you don't remember, last week I had posted a video that was up to the, I think, ninth day of, or ninth video of the tutorial that I've been watching on making an HTML5 game. So it definitely is starting to look like a game. This is what we kind of ended with the other day. So we had the player, the green guy is moving around with my mouse. We've got the red enemies randomly generating, and I've got these gray bullets that kind of occasionally get shot out in random directions around my player. So if I open up the 10th and 11th day of progress here, the two videos that I watched most recently, one big change is now I can control the player with the letters A, S, D, and W, like some games which make you use for moving characters around. The mouse doesn't do anything with the player anymore directly. It does let me aim the way that my bullets go. So whenever I click, it will shoot a bullet in that direction. And that's completely based on where my player is positioned on the screen. Keep my mouse in the same direction. It always, no, I didn't move the mouse. There must be a glitch there then. There we go. So now it just kind of shoots around wherever I've got my mouse at. The upgrades too, let's take a look at that. So right here, notice how even though I'm frantically clicking my mouse, it's kind of a slow attack speed, I guess you would call it. But if I get an upgrade now, before the yellow was like 1,000 or 10,000 points. If I got it, you can see my score goes up 1,000 every time I get a yellow one. Now the orange ones used to be 1,000 points, but now what they do is they give you an attack speed upgrade. So if I get a bunch of orange ones, you'll notice that I can shoot bullets much faster. Now it responds, I send them very, very quickly. Okay, so I've got two different types of upgrades now, not just more points or fewer points, but can I shoot fast or not, the orange ones. And then there's also a special attack in this one that changes in day 11, because this is a little bit of a ridiculous special attack. But if I right click, now I send out a special attack of bullets in all 360 directions around my player. And I can just keep doing that. That's a little bit ridiculous because it completely wipes out all enemies. It's a little cool to watch, but makes the game a little too easy. Okay. So those were the big changes, if I remember correctly. I don't think there was anything else that we kind of modified. And you still have 10 HP. Still got to survive as long as possible. You still randomly generate enemies. Just got different ways to attack, different ways to move, different upgrades, that kind of thing. So if we take a look at the code here. So, oops, that's day 9. If we take a look at day 10 and 11's code, how I did some of this stuff is, let's just go through test collision, all that stayed the same. Where do I get into date on mouse, start game, click context. Okay, here's where I've put them in. On click is when I left click. So I'm checking to see if after 25 frames, which is roughly a second, my attack counter, if it's greater than 25, will allow me to shoot a bullet. And then right after I shoot a bullet, I set my attack counter to 0. So I can't keep shooting all the time. It has to be an attack counter over 25. The special attack here, the on context menu is when you right click and it pulls up this option menu that's called a context menu. So right clicking, you tell if you've right clicked if you use this document on context menu. Okay, then my special attack I can't do as often as my normal attack, which is just 1 bullet. So after every 50 attack counters, I can shoot a special attack, which right now I go through This little for loop means I start at 0 for an angle of 0, and I go through all 360 angles, and I add 1 to my angle every time I go through this loop. So what this means is once I get down to the bottom of the loop, which is this little bracket here, I go back up to this line of code and I add 1 to my angle. So I shoot another bullet at a degree of 1. And then I go through it and I shoot another bullet at a degree of 2. And I do that until I get to a number higher than 360. So that's where that big giant circle special attack came from, was this line of code here. And then I set my counter to 0 again. So we might be wondering, like, how do I get an attack counter? Like, why did that upgrade let me shoot stuff faster or more quicker than I did before? So we'll come back to these on keys later. And if we go to, I'm pretty sure it's in my update file, position, where's all my player stuff? Might be up at the top. Yes, right up here. It's right at the top here. Every time that I call or run this update code, which, if you remember correctly from one of the very first episodes, runs every 40 milliseconds, you run that whole chunk of code up here. So every 40 milliseconds, I'm going to add my attack speed, my player's attack speed, to my attack counter. So if we go up to the player where I created the player, which was way up at the top, we will notice that I created a couple new variables in the player. One was called the attack counter, and one is called the attack speed. So right away at the beginning, your attack speed is 1. So every time the update function runs, you add 1 to the attack speed. But if you get one of the new updates, which I think was down in the update part, ugh, a lot of code. So down here in the upgrade list, if the category of the upgrade, meaning the yellow one, is score, you will add 1,000 to your score. But if it's one of the orange ones, the ones that I called attack speed, then I'm going to add 3 to my player's attack speed every time. So that means that every time you run this update code, instead of adding 1 like it was at the beginning to attack speed, you're going to add 4 to it, because 1 plus the 3 from the attack speed bonus means you add 4 every time that this code is run. So that actually adds up pretty quickly to where you can just click, and as fast as you can click is as fast as you can shoot bullets. Okay, so that's where that came from. The code for my mouse, I think it's still in here. Maybe I deleted it. Okay. So I used to move my player by using this code right here, but now I use it with the keys. So what I had to do was actually create some variables up in the player, because all your computer can do is let you know that a key was pressed. It will not be specific enough to say when the A key is pressed. It sends a signal or an event that says, hey, a button on the keyboard was pressed. So what I have to do is create some variables to let me know which key is pressed. So I create what are called Boolean variables. Boolean is just a fancy name for it's true or false. So I make all of my button presses false at the beginning when I make my player, meaning I'm not pressing down, I'm not pressing up, I'm not pressing left, I'm not pressing right. So now when a key is pressed on the keyboard, it lets you detect that by this event called document on key down is when you press a key, or document on key up is when you let go of a key. So what they do is there's a website, there's probably multiple websites that you can look up keyboard codes for Java, or JavaScript, I should say. So key 68 happens to be the D key, which is right in this format. Then 83 is the S, which is down. 65 is A, which is to the left, and W is 87, and that's the up button. So what I do is if it's pressing right, if you push the D key, then I set it to true. or if it's pressing down, which is the S key, I set that to true. So whenever those are true, you're gonna move your player in whatever direction that is. When you let go of them, it sets them to false again. So right here, update player position says if player is pressing right. So that means if this is true. So if I push down the D button, it's going to change that value to true. And whenever it's true, it's going to add 10 to your player's X value. Or if you're pressing left, you're going to take away, subtract 10 from the player's X. If you're pressing down, it's going to add 10 to your position. I was just trying to figure out why you would add if you were going down, but it's because the top of your screen is 0 and the bottom of your screen is, I think 500 was my canvas size. So that's why down is adding and up is subtracting, because 0 is up at the top and 500 is down at the bottom. All right. Then all this jazz here is trying to figure out if you've gone over the screen. So if I took that code out, and why don't we do it? See what happens. This will show you some different kinds of comments. Like I could put right here, I could comment, this tells if you are out of bounds. And that's kind of a good idea to comment in your code too, especially for yourself. If you come back in a couple months and you have no idea what's going on, or another programmer who's one of your coworkers, if you become a programmer in the future, needs to read that code and know what it's going to do. So that's one way to comment, is double backslashes or forward slashes, one of the two. But if I want to take out a whole chunk of code, I can use, I forget the fancy name for it, but it lets you comment out a whole chunk by using these asterisks and the backslash, forward slash, whatever that one is, and it makes that code go away. So if I save this and go back in the code, well, before I refresh it, what that code does is it makes it so, whoops, some of the code is bad. I should see if I can fix that actually. It lets you, like, I'm pushing the left button, but I can't go off the screen. Obviously something's going wrong because I can go off the right of the screen. But let's take out that code. I saved it. If I refresh it, now I can go off any of the directions. That's what that code did there. So let's see if we can fix that actually. That'd be a good thing to go over. If I uncomment this code out, and why is that going off the right? Because I used mouse X. I forgot to change the variable to the player's X. I put it in a new format. So that should let me not go off the side anymore. Let's check it out. So, yep, that was the issue. Okay, so those things there let me tell which key is being pressed, and then if a certain key is being pressed, it changes the player's position by 10 in whatever direction it needs to change it. And then obviously I can shoot my bullets. Special attack made those go in 360 degrees. And that's pretty much everything that happened in this version, or these updates, in day 10 and 11. A lot of the stuff coming up, I don't know if it's in day 12 or not, but I know the most recent ones I was working on are getting into some pretty deep computer programming concepts. It's actually not going to look like anything in the game is changing, really. There's a couple changes, but a lot of the stuff I've been working on lately is just making the code cleaner and more efficient and easier to make changes in the future. If you decide to make an update to your game or add a cool feature to your game, you can do it a lot easier and you don't have to write as much code. So that means I'm pretty much done with this video, and I hope you have some good luck with your projects.